given that I've been through university in renewable energy, and I take a relatively close interest in environmental issues to read them. I don't do much, I'm not an activist and so on. I just read, booklets and leaflets. This is the first time I've ever seen a suggestion to change your banking habits. I mean, it makes sense. One of the suggestions, I think it'd be better to walk us through that. Not that I would help, because I don't have much money that's going to sway many banks one way or the other. But what was the logic there? Because I saw there was a suggestion of moving your savings, which is something I'd not come across before.
The most important thing that people can do is to look at their pension providers, first of all. And you can advise your pension managers to not invest any of your money into the oil industry and other industries, and perhaps the armaments industry. But I'd be interested mainly about, I've divested my pension from anything to do with the oil industry, and specifically to invest into invest my funds into renewables. And it's a big thing. It's a really big thing at the moment, and it's very powerful. It sends a very powerful message. And one of the interesting things is there's a massive organization called BlackRock, investment company. Even they have gone to the point now of telling all their associates and investors to divest from oil companies and coal companies. So fossil fuels are the end. We've got to stop that, and there's nothing better than finances to stop that actually happening. And there are various banks out there you can search on Google which have a much more sustainable attitude to the environment. For example, there are various companies that will encourage. There was a Greenpeace campaign last year against Barclays Bank, telling them not to invest in oil and coal, which they do, and I think we're gradually getting through to the money people that they need to change, and that's having a big impact. Even the oil companies are, well, there's a lot of greenwashing. They say they're doing a lot of good stuff, but they're not. You go on their forecourt or Shell forecourt, and there's all this greenwashing going on about their fuels being green and the rest of it, which is just not true, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to suggest a few other ideas for people who may be looking to change their activities? I mean, obviously, I think most people would know the basics, but things like that I actually, to this point, hadn't really considered. Is there other options which you think people could do to participate in not only climate, but mostly, as you've said, as you've been talking about the C and Bs and what people can do in their lives to change what they're.
Well, I could go on forever. So just very basically, when you can, because I know they can be expensive, move over to electric cars. Don't go to hybrids. Hybrids are much more expensive. You're carrying around two engines, very expensive cars. And I've had a hybrid, and they're really quite ineffective. If you're going to go the whole hog, go to electric, and you're really doing some good. Then yes, they do have an environmental impact, but it's much better over a whole lifetime of a car. It's much better than fossil fuels. And by the way, when I fill up my tank, which will take me, I've got a good electric car, and when a Nissan Leaf, it'll do 120 miles, and it costs me something like a £5 every time I do that. I don't pay any road tax, and the maintenance cost. Think about your maintenance cost for your car. It's £100 twice a year. There's less moving parts. So imagine a £5 going 120 miles on a £5. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. So there are some real benefits really for electric cars, and we've got to move. We've got to help the process. So electric cars, look at your energy suppliers, and you can easily Google which ones are the better ones, and going for renewals. We talk about finance, changing your finance. Plastic is a really important one. Try and cut out all disposable plastics. Everything should be reusable. Cut out all those plastic bottles. There's no need for it. You can have a renew bottle. The tap water is just as good as that. It's just thinking about the process. Think about taking a reusable bag every time you go shopping. If you can just do those few things, you're having a huge impact. We're all having a huge impact, really.
And what is there to do as an individual level to anything towards the plight of the bee, or anything which you could do towards the both, as you've said today, the C and the B, whichever one of those two maybe?
Well, both things. The best thing one can do really is to support the campaigns. There are campaigns out there. If you Google super trawlers, Greenpeace super trawlers, you'll find. Talk to your MP, just send them a letter on it. Sign a campaign. Talk to your councils about insecticides. Get involved. It doesn't take much. Just takes a letter here or sign a petition here. But if everyone gets involved, we can have a real impact on society. And let's make this society sustainable and good for the future, and good for all our young relatives that are coming forward. Really, I'm doing all this for my grandchildren. It's not a personal extremist thing. It's a serious thing that governments recognise. We're in an emergency. We need to do something about it. And I want a nice, clean environment for my grandchildren. That's what it's all about.
And what would you, because I mean, the only two things that I do that I would say consciously do, let's say, so far, is whenever I buy fish, which is probably only once a week, once every other week, let's say, I try to look for the sustainable fisheries symbol. Is that a useful thing to do? I mean, and also when I buy honey, it's looking for local suppliers, or when I go to the supermarket, it's actually very hard to find a imported honey, which is a bit frustrating, which is why I go to the local people. But I mean, what are your two thoughts on those two activities, if they're actually useful?
It's not easy. It's not easy on the fish. It's not easy because even if it's MSC, they're still buying from super trawlers at some stage in there. The fisheries are owned by 6 companies, mostly Scottish companies, I believe, and none of it is 100% sustainable because of the fishing practices that we have. So you need to sort of complain to governments and join petitions on that sort of thing. What I would suggest from my own personal thing is I will not buy. I love salmon, but I will not buy farmed salmon because of the pollution that it causes and the damage to the environment that it's causing.
And does it have to be labeled? How would you know that that's?
It's easy. It's easy because farmed salmon is pink, which is artificially provided to it by the way of crustacean shells, shrimp shells they get it from. If you look at a wild salmon, it's actually red. The difference between a wild salmon is sometimes you'll see both of them on the counter, and if so, buy the wild salmon. It's less expensive, but it'll probably have less pollutants in it. It'll be cleaner and fresher for you. But from my point of view, I will not buy farmed salmon because huge damage it's causing. They only use a small proportion of the fish they're culturing actually survive. So many die. And die with diseases or skin problems and things like that. You wouldn't allow that with cattle. Why would you allow that with fish?
But surely,
and contaminate the wild fish. It's something we just shouldn't be supporting really at all.
Is there not a danger there though of then going and unsustainably fishing wild stock? If people were to switch over to wild stock buying, is there not a danger of them then becoming unsustainably fished anyway?
It's all a problem. Eating fish, eating any fish is a problem until everything's sustainable. Nothing. It's not sustainable. The fishing, they say it is, but when you think the fishing companies are involved with the MSC, so it's not independent at all. The only way you can be absolutely sure is buy from a local fisherman. And even then you can't tell. I go along to Worthing Seafront and buy, and it's all bought in from other places. So you just can't tell. But there are local fishermen that you can find out about if you live locally to the sea. I do.
Yeah.
It's not easy if you're in the city. So
or here in the middle of Oxfordshire, which is miles away in British terms from the sea.
Yeah.
We should
Yeah,
have to buy.
There's a fantastic fish shop in Oxford. I've been to. It's got every sort of fish there that you'd want, but it is difficult. It is difficult to at the moment to work out if any of them are really sustainably fished.
You should have to buy Cornish, whatever it was. What was in the news a couple of weeks ago? They renamed Cornish Place, didn't they? I don't know what it was. They renamed.
Yeah.
A good try. Perfect. Right. Yeah. Cheers. Thanks for coming on. And good talk.
Lovely speaking to you, Elliot. And look after yourself and keep safe.
Keep safe, everyone. See you next week.